In 2015, if you were in Minnesota going in to get your regular teeth cleaning at River Bluff Dental, you would have encountered a bizarre, unsettling scene. These are just some of the signs that vandalized an abandoned dentist's office. The reason? Walter Palmer, a dentist working there, had gotten into deep trouble for trophy hunting in Africa. But Walter's problem wasn't with the law. He had the correct hunting permits. His business was in shambles because he had killed Cecil the lion and the story had gone viral. An outraged internet mob quickly rallied, determined to make Walter pay.
He is just disgusting. He is despicable. Poor Cecil. I mean, he's despicable.
Facebook groups were set up to coordinate his disgrace. His business practice was forced to shut down. Public threats like this were everywhere. His private address was leaked online, his house was graffitied, and pig's feet were thrown on his driveway. Even now, 4 years later, it haunts him at his dental practice. Walter Palmer has been publicly shamed. Public shaming is an old phenomenon given new life by social media, bringing back everything but the stocks and literal tomatoes. The term shaming is an understatement too, since these often have tangible impact. Loss of income, job, being outcast from the public, and sometimes these effects can feel deserved, but there are also times when the crime and level of outrage feel mismatched. Actions ranging from the absolutely heinous to decade-old bad jokes feel like they get the same level of coverage online. Twitter goes on until someone is fired or canceled. Your reputation can be destroyed in an instant. So I wanted to ask, why has public shaming become so popular? And is it making the world a better place? Or is it more harm than good? For a great deal of human history, people lived in small communities where public punishment and shaming was common. If you were caught stealing, you might get 10 lashings at the center of town, and these public punishments helped reinforce social norms, both for the criminals and the onlookers. The criminal was shamed in front of a crowd that knew him, and the onlooking community would think, I never want that to happen to me. But despite this dual benefit to society, this public justice slowly fell out of fashion around the early 20th century. A common explanation for this is that as people move to densely populated cities, shaming loses its sting. Because if you're ever seriously shamed, you can just disappear into another crowd within your city. The threat of public shaming just isn't as motivating. But this landscape completely changed with the rise of the internet. Suddenly, we're all placed back in the same small village again because our digital footprint follows us everywhere. New York or New Hampshire, you're always searchable, and your internet scandals are a click away. Now, of course, some things have changed. You won't literally be whipped during your shaming. We've done away with corporal punishment, so that's good. But in some ways, the way we publicly shame is more brutal than our ancestors because our new internet mobs cannot forgive. Consider that in the past, the public mob might gather in the street for an hour. The whip man whipped 10 times and it was over. The criminal had literally taken their licks and then the person could be reintegrated back into society. But today, the public mob gathers on Twitter for days, for months. We all take a crack with no one counting, without even a number to count towards. There is no leader to an outraged collective, which means nobody can say when it's over because no one of us speaks for all of us. Our forgiveness is fragmented, so as long as someone is willing to continue the public shaming, it will continue. But it doesn't end there. Modern shamings are also brutal because they are impersonal, just words on a screen. We don't know the person we're trashing online, whereas before, you knew who you were publicly humiliating. Maybe he was your neighbor caught in adultery, maybe she was your teacher caught stealing. You knew the person and had to face them. That's an emotional moment. You can't ignore what you're doing to that person. But now we can say anything and feel nothing. There's no need to look back at our shamees, no requirement to see the tears in their eyes. Monica Lewinsky, a name that's almost synonymous with shame, discusses what it was like to be one of the first recipients of this new global shaming culture.
Overnight, I went from being a completely private figure to a publicly humiliated one worldwide. Not a day goes by that I'm not reminded of my mistake. And I get it. It was easy to forget that that woman was dimensional, had a soul, and was once unbroken.
But even despite all of this, even though shamings often go off the rails, I understand why we love them. They're a modern form of vigilantism. Public shamings promise us the chance for justice even when our legal system fails or is too slow. You can see this with the Me Too movement that has brought people to justice who were previously thought untouchable due to their influence. Public shamings also promise to establish the social norms and behavior we want, even if our city doesn't have politicians who are willing to stand up for that. But beyond the gleeful shouts of justice and pointing fingers, there's a dark side to mob justice.
For one thing, power is a slippery thing in a mob. What can start as harmless criticism of a wealthy trophy hunter can quickly snowball into something else.
When you've got thousands of people behind you and the person you are shaming has lost their job, their income, their personal privacy, and everything they've worked for,
you're not punching up anymore. You're kicking a guy while he's down. Secondly, when there's no due process,
mistakes are made. Like when the internet mob went after Sunil Tripathi and his family because they suspected him of being the Boston Marathon bomber. We publicly shamed and harassed them only to find out he had committed suicide days before the attack even happened. So instead of being heroes and catching the bad guy like we thought, the internet mob had only been attacking a grieving family.
And the final problem is mob mentality.
When the mob amps itself up, there's no nuance. Whether they've stolen a cat, car, or killed the czar, there's only one option, and that's beat them up, also known as the Batman approach. No one knows this better than Tyler Clementi, an 18-year-old kid who was harassed online after an intimate video of him was leaked online. 3 days later, he jumped from the George Washington Bridge. Public shaming in some ways represents the best and worst of us. It represents our collective desire for true justice, but also our brutal, short-sighted, and often unforgiving mob mentality. Continuing a culture of public shaming guarantees many more people will be brought to judgment, but it will likely be a mix of justice and life-destroying internet overreactions.
And that's not a trade-off we should be okay with. Anything that risks the innocent just to catch a few more bad guys isn't worth it. This is a philosophy deeply rooted in our justice system, and it's why prosecuting criminals is slow and tedious. We have to make sure someone is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And we do all of this because we found out a long time ago, in a world where we shoot first and ask questions later, it isn't just the criminal that has to be worried. Everyone should be scared.
Look at where we started. This goes to the heavy-hearted. My heart is crying.
Thanks for watching that video. We're going to talk more about public shaming, but first, I want to tell you about our sponsor today, Dashlane. Dashlane is a password manager, something that is essential in the 21st century. You're always visiting new websites or getting apps that require you to create accounts, and there's a catch-22. If you want to remember your logins, you can only reuse a few variants of the same passwords over and over again, meaning that if one website is hacked, they've essentially hacked all your accounts. Of course, the solution is having completely different passwords for every single website you visit, but then it's easy to forget your many different passwords. Dashlane solves this by managing all your passwords for you across all your devices. Not just on Chrome, but not on Safari. Not just on Firefox, but not on your Android. Across all of them, which means you can trust Dashlane to automatically create strong passwords for you, truly random passwords, and never have to worry about forgetting that password or worry about getting on a device you didn't save that password on. It's a great combination of two things, helping with your security, but also just being more convenient. It also has neat autofill features so that you never have to remember your wallet or waste time filling in personal information when you're online. And the absolute best part is that you can get Dashlane for free by going to dashlane.com/coffeebreak. And if you want even more protection, you can get 10% off their premium membership by using promo code COFFEEBREAK. Their premium membership gives you access to dark web monitoring, which checks to see if your personal information is being bought and sold on the dark web for even more internet protection. So once again, whether you want a free membership or a premium membership, dashlane.com/coffeebreak, it supports the show and you're going to love it. Okay, so real quick, let's wrap up this shaming idea. Two books that I can really recommend are So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson and Is Shame Really Necessary by Jennifer Jacquet. In a way, these books are meant for each other. One kind of parallels the other. Jon Ronson talks about kind of the problems with shaming, and Jennifer Jacquet examines some of those pitfalls, but also the good sides of shaming. I love both of these books and agree with each of them on different points. With Ronson, I think he gave a really beautifully honest portrayal of how brutal these shamings can be, but I think his hypothesis of why shamings died out is just wrong. He says instead of it being because people can move to cities, it's rather because we just realized how brutal they were. And I think he conflates their public shaming and just corporal punishment in general, which there was like some distancing from corporal punishment, but that's kind of its separate issue from shaming. And then as far as Jennifer Jacquet, she properly identifies the fact that shame is the way we set up social norms. It's how we orient ourselves is with the approval and disapproval of other people. So that social norm idea is really crucial, but I think she's too optimistic with how empathetic we can be online. And I think if you look at the reward structure of these sites, I don't think it promotes that. I think it benefits all the worst excesses of our ability to mobilize as a mob, and I don't think her kind of utopian idea of how we could use shame is really going to pan out in the 21st century unless something majorly changes. That's all for now. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.